Good morning, everyone. Are Kruleboyz good now? No. No, they're not. What's wrong with Kruleboyz as of June 2023? God damn. Okay, so the way that I would like to analyze the deficiencies in the Kruleboyz army is to take all these different components that all different armies have and go through them one at a time to see where exactly we're missing things. So we have the overall strategy, synergy, and identity of an army. So roughly this is how all the different parts of the army come together to form a cohesive plan to win the game. Different armies win the game in different ways. For example, Ironjawz win by charging everything in, overwhelming your position, and killing you. They win with rend, right? And speed, and being hard to kill. By being meaty, it's very clear how an Ironjawz army wins, and a lot of the rules support that play style. Then you have hammers, so all armies need to have damage dealers, be they melee, ranged, or magic. You need to have damage dealers. All armies would like to have anvils, some kind of unit that's difficult to kill, that can take up space, hold objectives, and so on. All armies have support, be it magic, prayers, buffs, war scroll abilities, rules, and so on. Armies also need to have mobility, teleports, movements, run and charge, some kind of way of moving around the board, redeploys, and options. Options help buttress against changes in meta. If you have a lot of different styles that you can bring with your army, then you're able to counteract what's going on in the meta more effectively. That's why Big Wa is doing better than all of the other orc armies now. They're able to custom make a list that counters the meta more effectively. As a case study, I want to quickly show Stormcast Eternals and how all of these parts in the army work together to win. Now, I know that Stormcast Eternals are, in some sense, the flagship army of this game. They have way more war scrolls than a lot of other armies, so you'll have to take some things with a grain of salt. But I chose Stormcast Eternals because they're very well-rounded for the most part, and lots of people know their rules and understand how the army works. And it's also like a trainer army, like a My First Age of Sigmar army. So, it's meant to be very clear and simple. So for overall strategy, synergy, and identity, the rules are consistent with the aesthetic of the army. We're supposed to be hard-to-kill paladins that drop in from Azir, fight to the last man. We're incredibly brave. We're very elite. And we're going to fight, and we're going to die, and go back to Azir to fight again another day. So you have the rules Scions of the Storm, which is you're dropping into combat. You have Blaze of Glory, which is when you die, the soul goes back to Azir and can deal damage. You also have Holy Commands, which all, call for aid, Thunderbolt Volley, very good, thematic. And then we have different sub-factions. There's at least 3 good sub-factions. It fits with the feel of the game. And the different sub-factions feel different. So there's a very clear strategy. You drop in half your army with very clear unit roles, right? Here's a cavalry unit that deals damage. It's like, great, simple, easy to understand. And then the army is also very elite. Very, very clear. There's good hammers. You have Vanguard Raptors for range damage, Annihilators for melee damage, Fulminators for mounted damage. You have mounted heroes like Karazai for like that monster hero damage. Very easy to understand, clear hammers, and good anvils. You have Guard of Steel Soul, which gives a 12-inch aura 5-up ward. Stormdrake Guards have good saves. They have resistance to different kinds of magic. They have lots of wounds. Protectors, 2-up saves, right? They're paladins. They're also hit pretty hard. And you have Sequitors, just a cheap battle line unit that can have a 5-up ward in the combat phase, right? Like very good anvils. So far they have everything, right? Good overall rules, clear vision, easy to understand way to win, good hammers, good anvils. Moving on, they have pretty weak support overall. They have some good prayers, like they have some strong prayers, but weak magic. They have a hero toolbox, but that's kind of a weak point because, like I said, they have so many war scrolls. Of course, they're going to have a hero toolbox. And overall, they have pretty meh enhancements. So the support of this army is probably the weakest part of this army. I think it's on purpose so that it is easy to play for new players. It's like, we'll make all the war scrolls good, and then you don't have to worry about, like, if you don't want to play with enhancements, if you're new to the game, you're still going to have a good time. Mobility, they have Signs of the Storm, so half of the army is, you get to teleport them at the end of the movement, right? It's like they're not even on the table, you get to put them on the table. They also have a very strong teleport, translocation. What's cool about translocation is the priest on which you put it. You can take High Priest. It has a built-in +1 to his prayers. So translocation is really strong. You can also teleport units that are in combat. So you can have a unit that like goes in and does damage, and then you teleport them out, and then they get to do it again. So something like Fulminator's on the charge, right? Or you can save a unit that's going to get beat up and teleport them across the map to hold some objective. They also have mobility on some of their war scrolls, so Ride the Winds Etheric, that's an ability you'll see on some war scrolls. It's like a weaker teleport, but it's still there. And then they have good, strong mounted units, be they heroes, Stormdrake Guard, Fulminators, Tempesters, and so on. And then options. So there's at least 3 good sub-factions that people play, and that unlock different battle line options and unique heroes. They also have heroes that unlock more battle line options. They have a lot of battle line options, which is great. Super fun to list build. They also have a lot of good units in their army, and they have a lot of good allies. There's a lot of allies for Stormcast Eternals. I think it's almost every Order faction. And they also have Cities of Sigmar as Coalition. So lots of good options, but they have pretty bad enhancements besides Holy Command. So again, just to recap, very clear overall strategy. It does what it says on the box. Good hammers, good anvils, relatively weak support, but you can't be good at everything. Really good mobility, really good options. They have almost everything, and they're a mid-tier army, but they cover all their bases. The army feels complete. I feel like that's fundamentally the argument we're making about Kruleboyz. So let's compare Kruleboyz, right? Overall strategy, synergy, and identity. They have an incredible aesthetic identity. The models are great. The sculpts, like they feel great, but there's a lack of rules to support this army. Someone in my Discord, Big Old Rat, said Kruleboyz is an amazing army. They just forgot to release the rules. Yeah, that sums it up about right. So what rules in Kruleboyz actually fit into this theme, this plan? The plan of Kruleboyz, in my view, the way that I would see it, is we're going to try to disrupt our opponent as much as possible, just like, for those of you familiar with Magic the Gathering, just like a black deck. We're going to disrupt our opponent as much as possible. We're going to fill them with fear and uncertainty. We're going to weaken them, and then we're going to lunge out of the mist for a surprise attack. That's how the army should feel. That's how it should play. So what rules go along with this? We have a sub-faction ability from Grit and Blades, Out of the Mist, which makes us invisible outside of 12. That is good and fits the theme of the army. We have the Kruleboyz Wah, where we're setting up this moment to pounce, which is strong and fits with the theme of the army. We have Super Sneaky, which is actually a pretty weak rule. It's actually a pretty weak rule, but it does fit thematically with the army. Finally, we have Venom Encrusted Weapons, which on its own is pretty weak. It's a good rule to be buffed with Swamp Call of Poisons or Sludge Raker, right? But on its own, it's not a very strong ability. It's too inconsistent and random. It's too inconsistent. So our overall strategy, it's like a couple of decent rules and then some pretty weak rules. Not a lot there, really. We also in this army have a number of counter synergies, even for some of our strongest abilities. They're counter synergistic. So for example, we have great spells, but bad casters, and there's no support for casters. Because our general calls the big Wah, we're not going to pick a Swamp Call a Shaman, which means we don't get access to Master of Magic. It's like, do you want to have Master of Magic or do you want to be able to call the Wa? Can't do both. You gotta pick. There's no ways to get any kinds of pluses to cast in our army. There's nothing we can do. Now that Rogue Idol's gone, not that Rogue Idol was amazing in our army before, but there's no way for us to get any kind of plus to cast. We can run cogs for a reroll, but doesn't feel great. Swamp Call of Shamans also can't keep up with melee units. If a Gut Ripper unit charges in, the Swamp Call of Shaman is not going to be able to buff them the next turn. So that's kind of a bummer. Super Sneaky is actually pretty weak because you can't get support. If you take a unit of 30 Gut Rippers and Super Sneaky them into your opponent's army, like I was suggesting in the How to Win with Kruleboyz video, like it's a relatively strong move, but you can't get the support for them that you need. If you Super Sneaky them, this is before any hero phases, you're not going to be able to put a Swamp Call of Shaman's poison on them. They're not going to be within range of a Sludge Raker. They're going to get no support. And a Gut Rippies unit without no support isn't very strong. You'll tie up your opponent. Even if you get the Choking Mist and Noisy Racket, and if the unit that you pick to fight is getting -1 to hit against the Gut Rippas, they're still kind of weak. Imagine if Super Sneaky instead had a Swamp Call of Shaman, a Sludge Raker Beast, and 20 Gut Rippas. Or if it had a Shaman, a Vulture, and 20 or 30 Gut Rippas. Suddenly that's an army that you're afraid of. But that's not the case. It's not the case. It's counter synergistic. Vultures have Commanding View, and Gobsprak has a Mouth of Mork, which both require a command point to use, but we're a command point thirsty army. We want to redeploy, we want to unleash hell, we want to use Inspiring Presence, and this is before we even talk about all-out attack and all-out defense. All-out attack isn't very good in our army unless it's going to be like a monster fighting, but all-out defense is something we're definitely going to want to use, and we have these War Scroll abilities that require command points with no extra command points being generated anywhere. It's like, it doesn't feel good. If you're being honest with yourself, when's the last time that you used Commanding View? It's like almost never, because you don't have the command points for it. I had Marshcrawl the Sluggoth on this counter synergy list, but at this point I kind of just feel like Marshcrawler is best to be viewed as a Gloomspike Gitz unit. It's almost not in our army, and that's fine. Like that's totally fine. Noisy Racket is another one of our fairly strong abilities, but we're a castle army. We're not alpha striking. So you get -1 to wound on the first battle round. Cool. What does a castle army want to do on the first battle round? Unpack the castle a little bit. Take up some positions around the board. It's not going to be super helpful for us the whole game. It's just not. Noisy Racket should be like, pick 2 units. They get -1 to wound for the game. So much better. And then I put Manok to Cunnin on the list, but I know he's a narrative hero, and like I should even be considering him. But we have so few units, and it would be so nice to have something that was better. Hammers. We have good hammers. We have good monster hammers. We have Bolt Boys. We have Break-a-Boss and Ashtooth. Even Gut Rippas, if they're fully buffed, can slap. You know, Venom Encrusted Weapons is getting weaker over time the more ward saves we're adding to the game from all these new books, but you know, overall we have good hammers. Like, we have good hammers. Huzzah! Anvils? What anvils? Break-a-Boss, I guess. Rocket Troggoths, sure. But again, it's like our best anvil rock guts have no synergy. So what anvils? An anvil doesn't necessarily have to have a ward save and a high save, or like a low save. They just need to be difficult to kill. So a unit that can disappear and reappear, you know, it's like they're hard to pin down. That's another way that we can be anvil-y, right? For support, Out of the Mist is great. Sludge Raker's strong. Fasten's great, but overall the rest of the enhancements are pretty meh. Poison is very powerful when it works. When it's good, it's really good. We have really good spells, but bad casters. And the Vultures are relatively underwhelming support pieces. Gobsprak and Killaboss on Vulture, they're not actually doing all that much to help us out. All part of the plan, it's like fine, I guess, but I don't know. It's not very great. And a lot of the positives are inconsistent or specific in this army. So, for example, Out of the Mist is great if your opponent has long range shooting. If they have short to medium range shooting, it's useless. It's useless. So, mobility, this might be our weakest area. Fasten is really strong, like Fasten. We have good mounted heroes, Break-a-Boss, Gnashtooth, and Vulture. I guess for mobility it would be Gnashtooth and Vulture, good heroes. Super Sneaky is actually pretty weak. We don't have any teleporting. Super Sneaky is worse than a regular teleport, like in Iron Jaws, the great green hand of Mork or Gork, right? Is so much better than Super Sneaky. Super Sneaky would be great if it was in addition to a teleport. Super Sneaky would be great if you said to your opponent, like, yeah, so you deploy, I deploy, whatever, and then before the game starts, I get to pick up a unit and move it. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. There's no interaction. I don't have to put it in my deployment zone. And it's like right at the beginning of the game. And then if I'm going first, I also get to teleport. Like, again, imagine if you had like a 3 units, or even just Gut Rippers and a Shaman. Imagine if you could Super Sneaky Gut Rippers in, right? I'm pretty sure you have to do the Shaman Poison at the beginning of the hero phase, but just imagine if you could Super Sneaky a unit out, teleport a Shaman in, and then buff it with Poison. Sudden, oh my god, all of a sudden. If you have a unit of like 30 Gut Rippers, you're actually gonna double their mortal wound output. You're gonna go from about 10 to about 20 mortal wounds. What a difference. We have no cavalry, so there's no mobility there. But we do have the Hobgrots run and shoot. I love that. I love Hobgrots. I wish I could play more Hobgrots. But what are you going to do? And then options. We have one ally, from which we'll take a couple units. There's one sub-faction that people play competitively. That's good. We have 1.5 command traits, Super Sneaky, and the half being Egomaniac. We run 1 artifact power, Mork's Eye Pebble. There's 1 mount trait that we take. It's like, how many lists are we really running in Kruleboyz? Seriously. Is it 1? I know that people are taking these like counter shooting lists to Worlds right now, but it's a different format and it's specific to a certain kind of thing. But like, what list are we running that's good? I keep seeing all over the place people in comment sections and in Discords saying things like, oh, here, what do you think of the list I'm running? Here it is. And every time I look, I'm like, they're just all weak. There's just no list. There's no list. However, I guess that the options are also pretty limited for the other Auric War Clan books. So, in Iron Jaws and Bone Splitters, everyone just runs piggies. But maybe that should change. Maybe we should sort of rethink about how we're going to run the orcs in future books. So what do we do now? So, just as a brief recap, we have no rules, right? It feels like we're just missing rules. Some of our best things are even counter synergistic, and they're not helping as much as you think because they're hurting in other ways. We have good hammers. We have no anvils. We have relatively weak support. We have poor mobility. We have very limited options. So what do we do now? Well, I think we should take what's working and lean into it even harder. For example, Summon Boggy Mist is a very flavorful ability. The idea that we bring the swamp with us, and then once you're in this swampy mist, we get to play all of our tricks on you and deceive you and trick you. That's great flavor. So, give some more consistent way to summon Boggy Mist. Something simple, like if a Swamp Calla Shaman casts Summon Boggy Mist, it gets +1 to cast for every other Swamp Calla Shaman that's within X6, let's say. And if it's Gobsprak just gets like +2 to summon Boggy Mist. Why not, right? Put it on his scroll, let him bring the swamp with him everywhere he goes. Or maybe he just automatically gets to cast it. Do something to make Summon Boggy Mist more consistent to cast, and then buff the hell out of it. Casters get +1 if Summon Boggy Mist is in effect. Redeploy is always a 6. You generate an extra command point. You can do all kinds of things. You want to find a way to buff the army? Buff Summon Boggy Mist all the way up. Make it so much better. Here's a really fun idea. I really liked this idea as a way of making Gut Rippers more of an anvil unit. Or you could do this with any unit in our army. if the enemy starts their turn, like if an enemy unit starts its turn more than 12 inches from an allied unit, when it successfully finishes a charge against us, we teleport. We were never there. You were outside of the mist, right? You were more than 12, and you couldn't really see us because we're invisible outside of 12. And then when you moved in and charged at us, it was just illusion. It was just an illusion. It was shadows in the mist. Call it that. Call it shadows in the mist. And you thought we were there. You came and charged us. We were never there. You finished the charge move, and we just teleport. We're gone. We were never really there. That's a way of making an anvil. It's like, hey, opponent, just so you know, you have to actually, like, see me before you can charge me. If you try to run in at me, I just teleport away. It's like, F you, Alpha Strike armies. If you turn 1, Mighty Destroyer, Fastin, Mighty Wall Leader come at me, my whole army is going to disappear. And I'm going to set up over here on this side of the board on this objective. If an enemy finishes an inch within 3, if it started the move phase outside of 12, you get to disappear. Awesome. That's a way of making an anvil. It's a way of making an anvil. Yeah, you could also, there's all different kinds of stuff you could do, right? The design space is wide open, but I think that leaning into what's working is great. Another way that you could think about it is to take things that are good in the book, in our rules, and just fold them into the core rules and add more. So for example, just make Super Sneaky one of our rules. It's great. Just make it one of our rules. It's not a command trait. It's just, you get this ability. You get to be Super Sneaky. Same thing with Out of the Mist. Just build it into everything. Take the best part of the 3 sub-factions, build it into our core rules, and then give me 3 new sub-factions. Please give me a sub-faction that focuses on melee units, like Grid and Blades, should be Gut Rippers and Hobgrots. Buff them. Make them battle line. Make Hobgrots battle line. Something, right? In this, they get Venom-Crested Weapons, something. A second sub-faction, which is like a good sub-faction for in terms of the like the idea and the design, is Big Yellers. It's like, hey, we unlock a battle line option, and they get buffed. Just give us the invisible outside of 12, too. Like, sweet. Wow, suddenly that's, like, cool. Like, I'd play that. And then the third sub-faction should focus on monsters and mounted heroes. Buff. Give me a sub-faction that's going to make Gnash Toofs and Break a Bosses better. Or, like, something. Give me a sub-faction that's going to buff those mounted heroes. I want a reason to play them. Like, I want to say, in this sub-faction, you want to play 2, like, you know, you want to play them. Like, they're great. Like, play them. So, and then we need to replace what sucks and add parts of the rules that we're missing. We need more rules in general. We just need more rules. We also need cavalry units. We need anvil units. We need better sub-factions. We need better enhancements. And we need some more battle line options. Like, give me the things that we're missing. And fix counter synergies. Fix the counter synergies. There's a lot of them. And have a more of a defined game plan. Give us Super Sneaky in addition to a teleport, please. Please do that. We're supposed to be the Cunnin, right? We're supposed to be the magic orcs, the Cunnin orcs, the black deck orcs. Ironjaws have a rerollable teleport. Like, piss off. Give me a rerollable teleport, please. Please do that. Fix those counter synergies. Make Noisy Racket. Build it into the rules. Just build it into the rules. Make it the whole board for the whole game. It's like, we're a squishy army. Well, how do we deal with that? Give us -1 to wound. We're still weak against magic, right? We're still weak against shooting. Or maybe, I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, fix those counter synergies. And, yeah, give this a more defined game plan. It's like, here's how you win. You're going to screw with your opponent here. You're going to screw with your opponent there. You're going to screw with your opponent over here. They're going to be super weak. You jump in. You wah. You win. It's like, you can't see me, but I'm just like rubbing my eyes. It's like, the more I think about Kruleboyz, it can be really frustrating because I love the army. I want to play them. I want them to be good. But if I table Kruleboyz against some of the meta armies, if I play KO, if I play Gloomspite, if I play the new, like whatever it is, Zinch, whatever it is, OBR, I feel like I just get run over. And I'm looking at my opponent and I'm like, Really? Like, that's what you get to do? Like, that's your rule? Like, pink horrors? Like, piss off. There's nothing in my army where if my opponent deploys wrong, I win. It's like, oh, you didn't deploy properly, so I win. Like, blows my mind. You get how many free command points every turn? I said to the OBR player, 5? You get 5 command points every turn or whatever it is? It's like, Jesus. Like, yes, please. Oh, I get super sneaky, which kind of sucks. I get big wah, but then my magic kind of sucks. It's like, okay, sweet. I've never had an opponent look at me and be like, oh my god, that's so good. Like, I've never had that opponent. They're like, oh, Bolt Boys deal lots of mortals. It's like, yep. That's about it. God. So, one thing I saw from Vince Venturella, you should check him out on YouTube. Lots of good Age of Sigmar content there. But one of their podcasters or whatever had this suggestion that you give the Orc War clients the Skaven treatment. So by that, it means that you take all the books and you combine it into one, and you say something like, if you play more and more of a certain sub-factions or a certain faction's heroes, you unlock more abilities. So that would be kind of cool, you know, if you were playing like a little bit of all 3 orcs, it's big wah, you know? And if you're playing 90% Iron Jaws with 10% Bolt Boys, you're going to get a bunch of the Iron Jaw rules, right? And then you're going to get like one of the Kruleboyz rules, something like that maybe. And then maybe if you're playing all Iron Jaws, then you're going to get, you know, unlock the final Iron Jaws rule or whatever it is, right? But it's like combine them together and give us more options. It's like every army is sort of a big WoW army unless you're playing 100% from a sub-faction. But then that's your sort of choice, right? So it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. I like it. I'd be open to things like that. It's also a very clean idea in that you have the Iron Jaws are Gork, the Kruleboyz are Mork, and the Bone Splitters are the Wah, right? So you have Gork and Mork and then the Wah. So I feel like it's great. Like it'd be a great way to like synergize the book, right? You open it up and it's like Gorka Morka Wah. It's great. Love it. It'll get better, I promise. I feel like I am optimistic with this army overall because orcs are the quintessential destruction army. We are Gorka Morka's chosen creatures, the greenskins. And the next time our book comes around, I feel like it's going to be good. I feel like Games Workshop really should put a lot of effort into this army. I feel like they would sell a lot of Kruleboy models if they made it good. There's lots of this new the new piggy hero for Iron Jaws. You know, like there's a lot of reason why they should make this book good. And I ultimately am optimistic that this army will be, you know, A tier at least at some point, and I can't wait. So keep your hopes up, everybody. But until then, like, subscribe, and